Look at him.
Oh, why? What the fuck, Duncan? It's like you're drowning in milk.
Dude, I look like a silhouette of Duncan's butt crack.
Oh my god, this is oh. Oh my god, we're gonna be ninjas.
You don't know we're here. Shut up.
You don't know we're here. Shut
You
up.
can't see us.
Milky Majesty. Hey, what is going on, my fellow godlies and Warframe enthusiasts around the world? I am Vance, blessing you with yet another Warframe god build today, where we're going to be taking a look at the support queen herself, Trinity Prime. Now, Trinity Prime's pieces are only going to be dropping from the relics. They recently changed it to where all the Prime parts now drop through relics instead of the Void, which is kind of a shame because Void Endless missions were the ideal way to ducat farm. Now you've got Borrow-Katir's drops, which are still expensive, but there's really no way to get a hold of these ducats at a fast rate. But if you're confused about where to get these parts, make sure you refer to the description section where I'm going to provide a link to the Wikia. There you can search for any piece you're looking for and find out its drop location. Alright, so let's take a look at Trinity's ability, shall we? Her first ability, Well of Life, does as advertised. It creates a Well of Life on an enemy, and allies shooting this enemy will get a health return from damaging it. Now this is kind of useful for interception missions because let's say you're leveling up a weapon and you haven't brought something that can do the damage. If there's an enemy on a terminal, you can pull them off really quickly by casting this on them. That's not its primary use, but you know, it's got some CC potential. Energy Vampire is essentially the same thing, but instead of health, it's energy return, and it doesn't make them float. However, it does stagger them quite a bit and stun locks them in place. Link is her third ability. Any damage taken while Link is active will be channeled to a nearby enemy. This is going to be pretty essential to this build, and I'll explain it later. Lastly, her ultimate blessing restores health and shields of allies within Trinity's affinity aura. These allies also receive a degree of damage immunity. The greater the healing, the greater the immunity. So in other words, the stronger your power strength, the stronger the immunity. Alright, so now we're going to actually take a look at her builds. And the reason why I say builds in plural form is because everybody knows by now that there's two versions to Trinity. There's the Energy Vampire Trinity and the Blessed Trinity. For the Energy Vampire, I'm going to roll with Physique, Rush, Overextended, Transient Fortitude, Flow, Quick Thinking, Vampire Leech, Blind Rage, Fleeting Expertise, and Stretch. One thing that I've got to point out is that the Fleeting Expertise is not here because of the efficiency, it is here because of the negative duration. You want negative duration with an Energy Vampire Trinity, and the reason for that being is because EV is going to make the enemy pulse with energy. And the shorter the duration, the shorter the animation for that pulse. So you're going to have multiple pulses all with the span of like a millisecond. Overextended so we can reach the maximum range, especially in raids. That's going to be super helpful to the team. They're going to praise you for that. Stretch is here because of that as well. Transient Fortitude so you can capitalize on the maximum amount of energy per pulse. Same thing with Blind Rage. Flow is not very important to be primed if you don't want it to be primed. However, if you do want it to be primed, you're going to have to put in more Forma. I didn't do it simply because this is an EV build. I'm constantly going to be maxed. Vampire Leech is really helpful because excess energy replenishes shields by 150%. Quick Thinking is pretty necessary because, let's face it, the EV build isn't the tankiest. It can't take a beating because of that negative duration. We can't capitalize on the Link, so we're gonna have to have a failsafe in case the shit hits the fan. Alright, on to our next item of observation. So for my Blessed build, I'm gonna go with Physique, Coaction Drift, Quick Thinking, Transient Fortitude, Abating Link, Narrow-Minded, Streamlined, Vitality, Prime Flow, and Stretch. Now, if you notice, I swapped out my augments here because Energy Vampire isn't going to be as useful on this build as it was with the EV, and Abating Link is something that we're going to use pretty damn often since our duration is obviously a lot higher with Narrow-Minded. Transient Fortitude for the healing capabilities, Quick Thinking to get us out of a tight situation, range is also important. Prime Flow, I went with this one this time because it's a little bit more important. Same reason with the Streamline. Energy is a little bit more important on this build than it is with the Energy Vampire. And then Vitality to just make us take a hit a little bit more. Coaction Drift is for the aura strength and effectiveness, which makes Physique making us a little bit tougher. So that's the entirety of the Bless build, but it really synergizes really nicely with the melee that I used. Okay, so on to weapons now. For primaries, I chose to run with the Tigris Prime, just because it's really good. That's really the only reason why I decided to use it. It doesn't really synergize well. It's got no other place here other than the fact that it's a one-hitter quitter for most enemies. It's just a really badass weapon. Anytime you want to do a mega amount of damage, you're really going to need it for the Energy Vampire version of Trinity because she has no offensive capabilities whatsoever. The only thing that really does do damage out of her maneuvers is EV itself. EV itself is great at taking out Kayla Dethame, especially when Kayla Dethame is in sorties. I've noticed that EV zaps her health and her armor really nicely, but this will more than make up for anything that Trinity lacks in the way of offense if you choose to use it. Alright, in the way of secondaries, I'm using Akstilletto Prime again. I showcased this for the Nova Prime God builds, and there's really nothing changed here. It's nothing special. Again, I'm primarily using this just for offense. I rarely use secondaries at all with Trinity. Normally, I'd be using like a Spira Prime for a self-damage build, but self-damage doesn't really matter for anything anymore due to the recent updates, so I just kept it with Akstilletto Prime and played it safe. Okay, so on to the weapon that really matters for the Bless build, the Ack Brunt. Now the reason why this is so crucial to the Bless build is because you get to help your teammates out tremendously with the electromagnetic shielding. While you're blocking, you're going to redirect 50% of the damage taken by allies within 20 meters to yourself. And because you have Link turned on, you're not only going to channel that damage back to them, but you're also going to diminish their armor due to the augment that you're wearing. So this synergizes just so amazingly. I'm going with Final Harbinger here because I really don't want to use the other stance, the 11th Storm. Prime Fury, Prime Pressure Point. There's the pretty standard setup here, but just note that you're going to need this mod in order to help your teammates out, and they will praise you because in those defense missions where you have like bullshit sorties or whatever issue you're dealing with, this is going to help your teammates survive a little bit more. You'll have to pop blesses less often. You'll really be helping out the team. And you'll be anti-armoring the enemy units, you name it. Like she's your ultimate support for that certain situation. Granted, you know, she can also give EV. Bless build's version of EV isn't totally useless. You should be popping that as often as possible. Alright, so moving on to my companions, I actually chose to revisit Shade specifically because they just recently reworked the Sentinels and made it so they all basically had a passive that's the same thing as Carrier's main ability. Carrier now converts ammo and stores it kind of like an ammo mutation, and then all of the Sentinels in their entirety have the little vacuum passive, which, you know, lets you pick up mods, although I haven't seen it really working. Like it seems to have a much shorter range. I don't know if it's bugged, I don't know what's going on, but the reason why we're going to be using Shade for this setup is because of the whole Ghost mod. All of these other ones are just kind of preference. You can, you know, apply the ones that you want to as needed. But I'm going to use Ghost specifically because in those instances where I'm blocking and I'm benefiting from abating Link, and I'm also taking the damage for my players, they're not going to directly be looking at me. Instead, they'll be targeting my teammates, and then I can take the damage off the teammates, send it back to them, and also, you know, unarmor them and whatnot while still being invisible. So this just makes it so we don't have to focus on the damage that's coming into us. We can focus more on the damage that's coming into the allies, should they remain within that 12-meter range. Something you might want to take note of here is the weapon I chose to use on the Sentinel. I'm running with Vulklok because it's got really good range, and I'm also using Vulklok because I'm pretty greedy with my mods. If I'm using shotgun mods on my primary, then I don't want to use a shotgun on my Sentinel because then, you know, they'll pull from the same mod pool. So anytime I'm using a shotgun as my primary, I'm probably going to be using like an assault rifle as my weapon on the Sentinel. Anytime I'm using an assault rifle for my primary, I'm probably going to use a shotgun on my Sentinel. But it's all just preference. If you have spare mods that you've maxed out, then go for it. That's all preference. However, I would personally choose Vulklok because the Bless build for Trinity lacks in range, and this may, although it may not do a whole lot in the big retrospective of everything going on, it does cover that range. And because we have Blast and Corrosive on with a really high status chance of 97.3%, you're going to be knocking anything down that could be a viable threat to the team, so that's always good. Alright guys, last thing I want to cover in this build is the Vizarin lens. I know that I showcased this back at the Zephyr God builds, but I never really talked about Mending Tides. The coolest thing about Mending Tides is when you're doing like a defense mission or an excavation, anything that requires you to protect an objective that has a health bar. Bless can't actually heal those objectives, but Mending Tides can. So it's going to be pretty necessary for you to max this thing out and then use it whenever your objectives are about to die. New Moon is also a passive that you want to go for as soon as you can because it allows you to instantly revive your allies, and alternatively it also lets allies instantly revive you when this is active. At some point, if you can afford it, I would go for Retaliation because it mirrors 2.5% of the damage taken back to attackers, which is basically the same thing as Link, and so it's going to synergize really well with Trinity. So going straight down the line, go for Mending Tides, go for New Moon, then go for Retaliation. Max all three of these out and Trinity will be damn near unstoppable, and when she is stoppable, people will be able to get her up really quickly so long as you're using your fifth ability as often as possible. Alright, so if I were to summarize Trinity's role within Warframe, I would say that not only is she the best healer support frame in the game, but she's also a fairly decent battle mage. You know, I see that people favor the EV build over Bless, but nowadays it's you just don't need energy like you used to. You got Xeneric Lens and you've got all these different exploits that can conserve energy, and you know, especially with them ramping up the difficulty of the Void missions where level 40s do the damage of level 100s, it'll be awesome to have this new Bless build amongst your teammates now because it can absorb the damage off of them and heal them on the go. Plus the Vizarin Lens, you know, she's damn near invincible. I mean, I personally favor the Bless build Trinity over a lot of things. It just stacks up really nicely. I would say that she's just as tanky as Ikaros, and that's an incredible thing for a Warframe to be. So if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe. The details to our God Builds merchandise and our Facebook fan page are always in the description. And thanks for watching. Until next time, peace.